The story does not begin with a wooden horse. It begins with a man weeping on a beach. He is a king, a veteran, and a survivor. For 7 years, he has been stranded on an island. The goddess Calypso wants him to stay. She offers comfort, beauty, and even immortality. But Odysseus stares toward the sea. He wants something far more fragile. He wants home. That is the central surprise of Homer's Odyssey. It is not really a story about reaching home. It is a story about what home means after war. Christopher Nolan's coming version may bring monsters, storms, and spectacle. Those things belong in the poem. But the Odyssey becomes stranger when we look beneath them. Its deepest dangers are not always cyclopes or sirens. They are hunger, loneliness, memory, pride, and mistrust. They are also questions of identity. What happens when nobody recognizes you? What happens when you no longer recognize yourself? And what does a hero become after 10 years of war? The Odyssey has shaped Western storytelling for almost 3,000 years. Yet it was never a simple adventure tale. It is a poem about returning from violence. It is a poem about stories themselves. And it is a poem that may not have had one author. The name Homer feels solid and familiar. But Homer may be less a single historical person than a tradition. Ancient Greeks believed Homer composed both the Iliad and the Odyssey. They imagined him as a blind poet. Some cities even claimed him as their own. But no contemporary portrait survives. No certain biography survives either. Even the date of his life remains uncertain. Most scholars place the poem's composition around the late 8th century before Christ. That was centuries after the world described by the poems. The Trojan War, if it had a historical basis, belonged much earlier. Many researchers connect it with the Late Bronze Age. That period ended around 1200 years before Christ. So the Odyssey is already looking backward. It remembers a heroic past through a later Greek world. That matters, because the poem is not a documentary from Troy. It is memory, imagination, inherited song, and social history woven together. Its palaces resemble Bronze Age halls. Its weapons and customs often reflect later centuries. Its geography is recognizable, then suddenly impossible. Its heroes live in a past that never existed exactly as described. That is not a flaw. It is part of the poem's power. The Odyssey feels ancient because it is built from layers. A singer remembers an old story. Another singer changes a detail. A local audience prefers one version. A new generation adds its fears. Over time, one long journey becomes many journeys. The Greek word for such a singer was aoidos. An aoidos did not necessarily read from a fixed manuscript. He performed. He used traditional phrases, repeated scenes, and familiar patterns. A feast had its language. A ship launch had its language. A dawn had its language. Rosy-fingered dawn appears again and again. So does wine-dark sea. Modern readers sometimes mistake repetition for weakness, but repetition helped oral poets build enormous stories in performance. It also gave listeners landmarks. They knew when a guest arrived. They knew what a proper host should provide. They knew when a ritual had been broken. The poem's first audience did not hear a fantasy universe. They heard a moral world. And in that world, hospitality mattered enormously. The Greeks called it xenia. It meant the sacred bond between guest and host. A stranger might be poor, dangerous, divine, or desperate. So a good host offered food first. Questions came later. The guest received a bath, a meal, and a place to sleep. Only then could names and stories be exchanged. That custom holds the Odyssey together. It also explains much of its horror. The Cyclops is monstrous, not merely because he has one eye. He is monstrous because he ignores hospitality. Odysseus and his men enter Polyphemus's cave expecting gifts. Instead, Polyphemus eats them. He has no assembly. No laws restrain him. He does not fear gods or neighbors. He lives outside the human system. That makes his cave more frightening than a battlefield. It is a house where every rule has collapsed. The contrast becomes sharper when Odysseus reaches the Phaeacians. Their society is almost impossibly generous. They feed him, they listen to him, they give him a ship, then they carry him sleeping to Ithaca. For Homer's audience, this was not background decoration, it was civilization. A society showed its values through the treatment of strangers. That may be one thing a modern adaptation could easily simplify. The Cyclops can become a monster sequence. The Phaeacians can become a pause between action scenes. But their difference is the poem's argument. One world turns strangers into food. The other turns strangers into guests. Odysseus survives because civilized people still exist. Even then, survival is never simple. Odysseus is famous for intelligence. The poem calls him Polytropos. That word has several possible meanings. It can suggest many turning, much traveled, or clever in many ways. It can also suggest someone difficult to pin down. Odysseus is a man of detours. He changes names. He changes clothes. He changes stories. He can build a raft. He can invent a lie. He can endure humiliation. But he can also destroy a moment through pride. The Cyclops episode proves it. Odysseus blinds Polyphemus by calling himself nobody. It is one of literature's greatest tricks. When Polyphemus screams for help, other Cyclopes ask who harmed him. He answers, nobody. They leave him alone. Odysseus escapes beneath the bellies of sheep. For a moment, cleverness has defeated brute force. Then Odysseus cannot resist speaking. From his departing ship, he shouts his real name. Polyphemus learns that Odysseus blinded him. And Polyphemus is not just any giant. He is the son of Poseidon. The sea god hears his son's prayer. Odysseus has won his escape, but he has extended his suffering. This is not a small mistake. It is the engine of the voyage. A clever hero has revealed himself too soon. The story keeps asking whether Odysseus can learn restraint. Sometimes he does. Sometimes he does not. That makes him more interesting than a flawless warrior. Achilles is often remembered for strength and rage. Odysseus is remembered for survival and calculation. But calculation does not make him safe. His intelligence creates solutions. It also creates temptations. He believes he can control a story. Again and again, the world proves otherwise. The Odyssey begins near the end. Troy has already fallen. Most of Odysseus's disasters have already happened. The poem drops us into a broken household. In Ithaca, his wife Penelope is surrounded by suitors. They occupy Odysseus's palace. They slaughter his animals, they drink his wine, they pressure Penelope to choose a new husband. And they treat his son Telemachus as irrelevant. Telemachus has grown up without his father. He was an infant when Odysseus left. Now he is nearly a man. But he has no certainty. Is his father dead? Has he abandoned them? Will the suitors consume everything before help arrives? The Odyssey is therefore not just one journey, it is several journeys unfolding at once. Odysseus must return physically. Telemachus must become capable of acting. Penelope must survive a hostile occupation. Each character is trapped by uncertainty, and each responds differently. Telemachus begins the poem hesitant and overlooked. Athena visits him in disguise. She urges him to seek news of Odysseus. He travels first to Pylos, then he goes to Sparta. There he meets Nestor and Menelaus. They are survivors of Troy. They offer stories, memories, and partial answers. Telemachus does not find his father immediately, but he finds something else. He learns that a son can leave home. He learns how leaders speak. He learns that inherited fame carries obligations. His journey is often treated as a warm-up. It is more than that. Telemachus is learning to live inside a legendary absence. He is not Achilles' son. He cannot simply inherit a clear, heroic role. His father is famous for tricks and returns. Telemachus must make a place for himself in a house built around uncertainty. Then there is Penelope. For centuries, readers have praised her patience, but patience is too quiet a word. Penelope is an active political survivor. She rules a household under siege. She must avoid remarriage without provoking open revolt. She must protect Telemachus. She must preserve Odysseus's property. And she must do all of this while people watch her. Her famous weaving trick is not merely romantic. She promises to choose a husband after finishing a burial shroud. The shroud is for Laertes, Odysseus's elderly father. Each day, Penelope weaves. Each night, she secretly unweaves her work. For years, time itself becomes her ally. The trick eventually fails. One of her servants reveals it. But Penelope has gained precious time. She has turned cloth into strategy. That is one of the Odyssey's great hidden images. The war hero crosses oceans. Meanwhile, at home, a woman fights through delay. No sword is visible, yet the stakes are enormous. The suitors do not simply want Penelope, they want Odysseus's household, land, status, and authority. Marriage would transfer power. Penelope knows that. The poem gives her another kind of intelligence. Odysseus is famous for cunning. Penelope is his equal in testing, withholding, and reading people. When he finally returns, she does not immediately embrace him. She tests him. That test involves their marriage bed. Odysseus had built it around the trunk of a living olive tree. The bed cannot simply be moved. When Penelope suggests moving it, Odysseus reacts. He knows the secret. Only the true Odysseus could know it. Their recognition is intimate, but also intellectual. They know each other through shared knowledge. They have survived because neither trusts too easily. A film could portray this as a tender reunion. It should also feel like two expert survivors meeting again. They have been separated for 20 years, 10 years at Troy, 10 years attempting to return. Their marriage has become a memory, a political symbol, and a private code. The olive tree at the center of their bed matters. It suggests roots. It suggests permanence. But even that permanence has been tested. The home Odysseus returns to is his, yet it is no longer familiar. The poem is often described as a homecoming. That phrase can be misleading. Odysseus does not walk into peace, he walks into a trap. Athena disguises him as an old beggar. His own servants do not recognize him. His old dog Argos does. Argos lies neglected on a pile of dung. He is old, weak, and covered with parasites. But when he sees Odysseus, he lifts his head, his tail moves. Then he dies. It is one of the shortest scenes in the poem. It is also one of the most devastating. The dog recognizes the master, the humans do not. And the condition of the dog tells us what has happened to the household. Neglect is everywhere. The palace still stands, but its moral order has decayed. A glittering royal hall can hide a collapsed home. That idea is deeply Homeric. Civilization is not marble columns or gold cups. It is whether old servants are respected. It is whether guests are fed. It is whether a widow can make choices safely. It is whether a son can inherit without murder. And it is whether a king can return without becoming a tyrant. The last question is uncomfortable, because Odysseus's return ends in blood. The suitors have behaved outrageously. They have abused hospitality in his own home. They have plotted to kill Telemachus. They have consumed his wealth. Within the moral world of the poem, punishment is expected. Still, the slaughter is not clean. Odysseus reveals himself during a contest with his bow. No suitor can string it. Odysseus, still disguised, takes the bow. He strings it easily. Then he shoots Antinous. The suitor is drinking. The arrow strikes his throat. Panic follows. The men plead. Some blame Antinous and Eurymachus. They offer repayment. Odysseus refuses. The room becomes a battlefield. Telemachus fights beside his father. Athena assists. Servants join the conflict. The poem then turns even darker. Several female servants are punished for supporting the suitors. Their deaths have troubled readers for generations. The text gives Odysseus authority over their fate. But modern audiences may ask different questions. Were these women free to choose? What power did they have inside an occupied household? Could they resist wealthy men who controlled the palace? The poem does not answer easily. It comes from a hierarchy far removed from ours. But we should not pretend the discomfort is accidental. The Odyssey asks for admiration. It also contains cruelty. A serious retelling should make room for both. That does not mean judging every ancient character by modern expectations alone. It means seeing the ancient world clearly. Power in the poem is uneven. Men command ships, armies, and inheritances. Women often face marriage, captivity, and dependence. Enslaved people are vulnerable to masters and invaders. Children inherit dangers they did not create. Odysseus is a hero. He is also a king in a violent social order. Those truths can coexist. The Odyssey itself often holds contradictions without resolving them. It admires Odysseus's capacity for deception, yet it punishes others for deception. It celebrates loyalty, yet Odysseus spends years away from Penelope. It praises home, yet its hero tells some of his best stories abroad. It imagines divine justice, yet innocent people suffer because gods are angry. That tension is why the poem survives. It is not a polished lesson. It is a difficult conversation across time. Consider the gods. Modern adaptations often treat Greek gods like superheroes with better costumes. But Homer's gods are stranger than that. They are powerful, petty, affectionate, cruel, and intensely human. Athena favors Odysseus because he resembles her. He is strategic. He enjoys planning. He knows that brute force has limits. Poseidon hates Odysseus because of Polyphemus. Zeus presides over an unstable order. Hermes carries messages. Calypso offers release, then resents the command to let Odysseus go. The gods shape events, but they do not erase human responsibility. Odysseus chooses to taunt Polyphemus. His crew chooses to open the bag of winds. They choose to eat the cattle of the sun. The gods punish, protect, and interfere. Yet people keep making choices. This combination makes the Odyssey unlike a modern action story. Fate is real, but character still matters. The poem begins with a complaint. Why blame mortals for their suffering, Zeus asks, when they often create it themselves? That question runs beneath the entire epic. Odysseus suffers because Poseidon opposes him. He also suffers because he cannot always stop proving himself. His men suffer because they disobey warnings. They also suffer because their commander leads them into impossible places. The poem never lets one explanation do all the work. That is another thing spectacle can miss. A sea monster is easy to see. A bad decision is harder to film. But the Odyssey's storms are often moral storms. Take the bag of winds. Aeolus gives Odysseus a leather bag containing every hostile wind. Odysseus is almost home. Ithaca is within sight. Then exhaustion overwhelms him. While he sleeps, his crew assumes the bag holds treasure. They open it. The winds burst out. Their ships are driven back across the sea. It is a painful scene because the goal was visible. They were close enough to see homes smoke. Then suspicion ruins everything. The men do not trust their leader. Perhaps they have reason. Odysseus has concealed information before. But the poem shows no simple villain. A bag that looks like wealth becomes a catastrophe. A small act of curiosity becomes years of delay. Then comes Circe. Modern memory often turns her into a seductive sorceress. The poem is more complicated. Circe turns Odysseus's men into pigs. Hermes helps Odysseus resist her magic. Then Odysseus forces a bargain. Circe restores the men. She becomes a host, advisor, and lover. Odysseus stays with her for a year. His crew eventually urges him to leave. This episode contains danger, desire, and an uneasy pause. Circe is not just an obstacle. She gives Odysseus essential knowledge. She tells him he must visit the land of the dead. That journey is among the poem's most revealing moments. Odysseus does not descend underground like later heroes. He sails to the edge of the world. There, he performs a ritual for the dead. Shades gather around blood poured into a pit. The scene is eerie because the dead are hungry for memory. They need blood before they can speak clearly. Odysseus meets the prophet Tiresias. He learns more warnings about his journey. But the underworld is not mainly about prophecy. It is about cost. Odysseus sees his mother. He did not know she had died. She tells him she wasted away longing for him. He tries 3 times to embrace her. His arms close on nothing. That image strips away heroic confidence. The man who escaped Troy cannot hold his mother. He meets Achilles, too. Achilles had been the greatest Greek warrior at Troy. In the Iliad, he chooses glory over a long, quiet life. But in the Odyssey, his ghost says something startling. He would rather live as a poor laborer than rule all the dead. It is one of ancient literature's sharpest reversals. Glory from the grave looks different. A war film might end with victory. The Odyssey begins after victory has already failed its survivors. Troy is destroyed. The Greeks return through shipwrecks, murders, storms, and betrayals. Agamemnon reaches home only to be killed. His wife Clytemnestra and her ally Aegisthus murder him. In Homer's version, their son Orestes later takes revenge. That story hangs over Odysseus's homecoming. Agamemnon warns Odysseus not to trust too quickly. Penelope hears versions of the same warning. Everyone fears the returning husband. Everyone fears the waiting wife. The Odyssey is filled with people trying to interpret incomplete evidence. A wife sees a stranger. A son hears rumors. A sailor sees an island. A king receives a guest. Every judgment could be fatal. That is why disguise matters so much. Odysseus's beggar disguise is not merely a plot device. It lets him watch before acting. He sees which servants remain loyal. He sees who mocks weakness. He sees the suitor's behavior firsthand. He also hears stories about himself. Some praise him, some doubt him, some assume he is dead. Imagine returning after 20 years. Imagine hearing strangers explain your life back to you. That is the emotional force of the disguise. Odysseus cannot reclaim his identity simply by announcing it. He has to prove that identity still means something. His scars help. A scar on his thigh comes from a boar hunt. His old nurse Euryclea recognizes it while washing his feet. For a moment, the secret nearly collapses. Odysseus silences her. The scar is physical evidence. But evidence needs interpretation. A scar can identify a man, it cannot repair a kingdom. The bow works similarly. It proves strength, skill, and inheritance. The marriage bed proves shared knowledge. The dog proves memory. The poem builds recognition through objects. This may be its most cinematic quality: a bed, a bow, a scar, a cloak, a cup, an old dog. Each carries a whole history. The objects do not simply decorate the story. They hold identity when words cannot be trusted. That is why the Odyssey remains so adaptable. Every age finds its own road home. Roman poets borrowed from it. Medieval travelers reshaped it. Renaissance artists painted its scenes. Modern novelists have turned it into domestic drama, satire, migration story, and psychological journey. The word Odyssey itself now means a long, difficult voyage. But that common usage has flattened the original. Odysseus does not just travel far. He travels through systems that test what it means to be human. The lotus eaters test memory. Their food makes people forget their return. They do not become monsters, they simply stop caring. That is perhaps more unsettling. Odysseus must drag his men back to the ships. They want to remain in a pleasant forgetfulness. The episode lasts only briefly, yet it offers a powerful warning. A person can lose home without dying. They can lose it by losing the desire to return. The sirens offer another version of the same danger. They do not promise pleasure alone. They promise knowledge. They sing of Troy. They claim to know everything that happened there. Odysseus wants to hear them, so he orders his crew to plug their ears with wax. Then he orders them to tie him to the mast. No matter how much he begs, they must not release him. This is one of Odysseus's cleverest acts. He knows his future self will make a dangerous choice, so he binds that future self in advance. The scene is often made sensual. It is also intellectual. The sirens tempt him with the ultimate historian's promise. They claim to possess the whole story, but knowledge without limits can destroy the listener. Odysseus survives because he makes rules before temptation arrives. That idea feels remarkably modern. We often imagine wisdom as knowing more. The Odyssey suggests wisdom can mean building restraints. The sirens are also connected to the poem's own power. Homer's song offers listeners knowledge of heroic events. It invites them to hear Troy again. But the poem does not drown us, it returns us to shore. It reminds us that stories are intoxicating, they can preserve memory. They can also trap us inside the past. Odysseus understands this danger better than most. He is not merely a hero in a story. He is one of the poem's greatest storytellers. At the Phaeacian court, he tells the long account of his wanderings. He describes the Cyclops. He describes Circe. He describes the underworld. He describes the sirens. He describes Scylla and Charybdis. For much of the Odyssey, we hear these events through Odysseus himself. That should make us pause. Is he lying? Not necessarily, but he is performing. He is speaking to a royal audience. He needs their help. He knows how to create suspense. He knows where to emphasize suffering. He knows how to make himself both clever and vulnerable. The poem never openly exposes him as unreliable. Still, it makes us aware of storytelling as an act. Odysseus survives through narration. He tells people who he is. He tells them what happened. He changes his story when safety demands it. For Homer, language is a tool like a sword. Sometimes it saves a life. Sometimes it creates danger. The Trojan horse itself belongs to this world of intelligence. The Odyssey refers to it. But Homer never gives the full, famous version later audiences expect. That detail is important. Many people know the horse from paintings, school books, and later retellings. They imagine the exact scene: a huge, wooden horse, Trojans pulling it through the gates, Greek soldiers hidden inside, a city asleep before betrayal. But the fullest surviving account comes from later sources. The Odyssey knows the horse as a story already. A singer describes it at the Phaeacian feast. Odysseus weeps when he hears Troy remembered. His tears reveal something essential. A hero can be celebrated and wounded by the same memory. The fall of Troy is a triumph for Greek strategy. It is also the beginning of trauma. Odysseus cannot hear the song without breaking down. That emotional fracture may be central to any serious adaptation. The cunning hero is not untouched by his own achievements. He carries Troy with him. He carries lost companions, too. One by one, his men disappear. Some are eaten by Polyphemus. Some die attacking the Cicones. Some are lost in storms. 6 are taken by Scylla. The rest perish after killing the sun's cattle. By the end, Odysseus returns alone. That fact is easy to say. It is harder to feel. He began with 12 ships. He ends as one exhausted man. The voyage does not gradually improve him through noble suffering. It removes everything: his fleet, his companions, his certainty, his public identity, even his clothing. When he washes ashore among the Phaeacians, he is naked. A princess, Nausicaa, finds him. The scene has beauty and awkwardness. Odysseus is desperate, but he must not appear threatening. He speaks carefully. He praises Nausicaa without touching her. She gives him clothing and advice. Again, survival depends on social intelligence. He must understand how to approach a stranger. He must control his need. He must make himself legible as human. Nausicaa's episode also reveals something about the poem's world. Young women move through public spaces. They wash clothes. They play games. They worry about marriage and reputation. Their lives are constrained, but they are not invisible. Nausicaa has opinions. She makes decisions. She imagines what people will say. The Odyssey frequently pauses to show domestic labor. Cloth is washed. Food is prepared. Beds are made. Guests are bathed. These actions create the civilization that warriors defend and destroy. A modern epic can become obsessed with kings and battles. Homer keeps returning to houses. The palace, the farm, the ship, and the bed. Those are the places where history becomes personal. Consider Eumaeus, the swineherd. He is one of the poem's most admirable characters. He is not a king. He owns no palace. Yet he welcomes the disguised Odysseus generously. He shares food. He offers a place near the fire. He speaks with loyalty about his absent master. Odysseus tests him with invented stories. Eumaeus passes. The scene is quiet. No monsters appear, no gods throw thunderbolts, but it reveals the poem's moral center. The best host in Ithaca is a poor herdsman. The worst hosts are wealthy aristocrats. That reversal is not accidental. The Odyssey cares deeply about status, yet it keeps measuring status against behavior. A king deserves loyalty only if his household deserves it. A poor man can embody dignity more fully than a prince. Eumaeus also tells us about slavery. He was kidnapped as a child. His story is brief but revealing. The ancient Mediterranean was full of movement. Merchants traveled, pirates raided, families were separated. People could become property through warfare, debt, kidnapping, or birth. The Odyssey does not condemn slavery in modern terms. It largely accepts the institution. But it allows enslaved characters voices, memories, and loyalties. Their presence complicates any comforting picture of heroic Greece. The home Odysseus longs for depends on servants' labor. His restoration of order depends on their choices. When viewers imagine Ithaca, they may see a rugged island and a palace. They should also see kitchens, fields, animal pens, laundry, and exhausted workers. History lives there too. The world of the Odyssey is not Athens. That distinction matters. The poem predates classical Greek democracy. It takes place in a loose landscape of kings, households, assemblies, and gift exchange. Its rulers are not emperors. They depend on personal reputation. They distribute food, gifts, and protection. They lead raids and command loyalty. Their power is real, but fragile. A king who cannot protect his house looks weak. A household without its master becomes vulnerable. Odysseus's absence creates a vacuum. The suitors fill it. They are not foreign invaders. They are local elites. That makes their occupation more unsettling. They know the customs. They know the palace. They know its weaknesses. They exploit the rules from inside. The Odyssey is therefore about political disorder as much as family reunion. Ithaca needs a king, but it also needs limits on men who believe wealth gives them entitlement. The suitors are young, well-fed, and confident. They assume Penelope's future belongs to them. They assume Telemachus can be ignored. They assume Odysseus is gone forever. Their error is not simply arrogance. It is failure of imagination. They cannot imagine the absent man returning, and because they cannot imagine it, they behave as if consequences no longer exist. That is a timeless human mistake. The story of the sun's cattle works similarly. Odysseus receives a clear warning. Do not harm the sacred cattle on the island of Thrinacia. His crew understands the warning, but storms trap them there. Food runs low. Hunger becomes unbearable. While Odysseus sleeps, the men kill the cattle. They roast them. They eat. The sun demands punishment. Zeus destroys the ship. Every crew member dies. Odysseus alone survives. The episode is often treated as simple disobedience, but hunger complicates it. The men are not killing cattle for amusement. They are starving. The poem still presents their action as fatal. Yet it lets us feel pressure closing around them. That is one of Homer's recurring strengths. A moral rule remains a moral rule. But human beings break rules under terrible conditions. The Odyssey understands that survival can make people desperate. It also understands that desperate choices leave marks. Odysseus is left alone on the sea. He clings to wreckage. Eventually, he reaches Calypso's island. There he becomes the weeping man on the beach. This brings us back to the beginning. Why does Odysseus reject Calypso's offer? She is beautiful. She is divine. She offers a life without death. Penelope is mortal. Ithaca is poor and rocky. Odysseus himself admits that Calypso may be more beautiful. Still, he wants to go. That choice has often been praised as devotion. It is devotion. But it is more than devotion. Immortality would end his story. He would remain outside time. No aging father, no growing son, no uncertain reunion. No death, but perhaps no meaningful change. Odysseus chooses mortality because mortality gives weight to home. A home matters because people can lose it. A marriage matters because time can break it. A son matters because he grows older while you are absent. The poem does not present immortality as simple bliss. Calypso has it. She is isolated. She lives on an island where nobody arrives by choice. Her name may suggest concealment. She offers Odysseus escape from human pain, but she cannot offer him a human life. That makes her one of the Odyssey's most melancholy figures. She is powerful enough to hold a hero. She is not powerful enough to make him love staying. When Hermes orders her to release Odysseus, she complains bitterly. She accuses the male gods of hypocrisy. They take mortal lovers freely, but goddesses are criticized for doing the same. The poem gives her complaint real force. Calypso is not merely evil. She is hurt, angry, and trapped in her own immortality. Again, the Odyssey refuses simple categories. Its monsters can show tenderness. Its goddesses can be wounded. Its heroes can be selfish. Its victims can make compromises. That complexity may be the poem's greatest special effect. It does not need computer-generated waves to feel vast. It becomes vast through competing desires. Odysseus wants home. Calypso wants love. Poseidon wants revenge. Athena wants her favorite hero restored. Penelope wants certainty. Telemachus wants a father. The suitors want power. Every choice pulls against another choice. The Mediterranean becomes a map of those pressures. But what was that Mediterranean really like? The Odyssey's geography has fascinated readers for centuries. Many places are recognizable. Ithaca is generally associated with an island in western Greece. Pylos and Sparta were real Greek centers. Troy stood in northwestern Anatolia in modern Turkey. Yet the wandering locations remain elusive. Where was the Cyclops' cave? Where did Circe live? Where were the sirens? Where was Scylla's narrow strait? People have proposed Sicily, Italy, Malta, Tunisia, and countless other places. No answer commands universal agreement. That uncertainty is not merely frustrating. It tells us something about the poem's map. Odysseus enters a world beyond ordinary navigation. The familiar Greek coast gradually dissolves into rumor, myth, and fear. At the edges of the map, people may forget their homes. Giants may eat guests, the dead may speak, the sun's cattle may graze. It is a mental geography as much as a physical one. The sea represents distance, but it also represents unpredictability. Ancient Mediterranean sailors knew this intimately. Ships hugged coastlines when possible. Weather could trap crews for days. Wrecks could mean instant death. Piracy was a constant danger. A journey of a few hundred miles could become life-changing. The Odyssey exaggerates and mythologizes this reality, but it draws emotional power from real maritime vulnerability. Odysseus is not traveling through empty blue space. He travels through a world where every shore has unfamiliar customs. Every wind can change a plan. Every stranger could become a host or a threat. The poem's sea is not romantic. It is hungry. And yet the sea also carries stories. Greek communities were connected by ships. Goods moved across water. Metal, pottery, wine, oil, textiles, and ideas traveled with merchants and raiders. Songs traveled too. A story told on one shore could be heard on another. The Odyssey reflects that connected world. Its hero speaks with Egyptians, Phoenicians, islanders, kings, herdsmen, and sailors. Some encounters may be fictional, but the sense of a mobile Mediterranean is real. The poem understands that identity changes when people move. Odysseus is always Greek, yet he becomes many things in transit: a beggar, a shipwreck survivor, a guest, a prisoner, a liar, a storyteller, a husband, a father, a stranger in his own house. That final identity may be the most important. The Odyssey is often called a return narrative, but Odysseus does not return to the old order. He returns to a world that has continued without him. Penelope has adapted. Telemachus has changed. Laertes has aged. Servants have chosen sides. Even the landscape feels unfamiliar. Athena initially disguises Ithaca itself with mist. Odysseus wakes and does not know where he is. Think about that. He has crossed the entire sea for Ithaca. Then he arrives and fails to recognize it. The poem makes home strange before it makes it safe. That is a remarkably honest insight. People who return from long absence often expect restoration. Instead, they meet change. Home preserves memories. It does not preserve time. This is where the Odyssey can speak strongly to modern viewers, not because everyone has fought at Troy, but because many people have known distance, migration, military service, exile, family separation, a long illness, a career that changes everything, a childhood home revisited after years away. The journey may be internal or physical, but the old question remains: can you go back? The Odyssey's answer is careful. You can return, but return is not reversal. Odysseus must rebuild recognition through actions. Penelope must decide whether to trust him. Telemachus must accept a father he barely knows. The house must be cleansed. The violence must be contained. Even after the suitors die, the story does not end immediately. Their families may seek revenge. Another cycle of violence threatens. Athena finally intervenes. She commands peace. The ending is not entirely comfortable. Divine authority must stop human vengeance. The poem knows that retaliation can reproduce itself forever. A son avenges a father. Another family seeks justice. Another weapon is lifted. Without restraint, every homecoming becomes a new war. That final movement is easy to lose beneath the famous bow scene, but it may be the Odyssey's final warning. Violence restores order only temporarily. Peace requires someone to stop. If Christopher Nolan's version emphasizes strategy, scale, and survival, that would fit Odysseus. But the poem may ask for something even harder. It asks for silence after violence. It asks whether a hero can set down his weapon. It asks whether intelligence is useful only in war, or whether it can build a life afterward. That is the difference between the Iliad and the Odyssey. The Iliad is centered on anger during war. The Odyssey is centered on consequence after war. The Iliad asks what rage does to a hero. The Odyssey asks what survival does to him. Achilles seeks imperishable fame. Odysseus seeks the smoke rising from Ithaca. One wants to be remembered forever. The other wants to sit again in his own house. But the contrast is not absolute. Odysseus wants fame too. He wants people to know his name. That is why he shouts it at Polyphemus. He wants the story to belong to him. Yet fame becomes dangerous when it competes with home. The poem does not reject glory completely. It questions its cost. The Odyssey was also not confined to one version forever. The text we read passed through many hands. Ancient scholars in Alexandria compared manuscripts. They organized and commented on the poem. The division into 24 books became standard in antiquity. But the oral tradition came first. That means every written Odyssey is a kind of snapshot. Behind it stand generations of performers. Some scholars once argued strongly for a single genius named Homer. Others imagined many poets and editors. Today, many recognize both individual artistry and inherited tradition. The poem is too coherent to feel like random fragments, yet it also bears signs of a long storytelling culture. The Homeric question remains open because the evidence is limited. We do not possess an original manuscript. We do not hear Homer's voice. We hear the echo of an ancient performance tradition. That uncertainty should not weaken the poem for us. It should deepen it. The Odyssey is not only a story about a man returning, it is a story that kept returning. It returned in recitation. It returned in manuscripts. It returned in translations. Every translator makes choices. Should Odysseus sound grand, rough, witty, or weary? Should the Greek repetitions remain visible? Should the verse move like formal poetry or spoken speech? No translation can be the final Odyssey. Each opens one door, each leaves another closed. That is why the poem can feel new after centuries. It keeps changing with its readers, and perhaps that is also why filmmakers are drawn to it. The story has everything cinema wants: storms, shipwrecks, gods, disguises, a siege, a lonely island, a bow contest, a house full of enemies. But its greatest moments are often quiet. A man holds back tears during a song. A wife unweaves cloth at night. A son asks strangers whether his father still lives. A nurse touches an old scar. A dog recognizes someone before dying. A man wakes on his own island and cannot identify it. These scenes do not need to be made larger. They need to be allowed to breathe. The danger of adapting Homer is not leaving out every episode. No film could include everything. The danger is mistaking plot for meaning. The plot says a king takes 10 years to return. The meaning is more difficult. A person can survive every external danger and still lose what matters. Odysseus must keep choosing against that loss. He chooses Ithaca over immortality. He chooses restraint near the sirens. He chooses disguise before revelation. He chooses to test others and accepts being tested. He does not always choose well, but the poem gives him time to fail. That time matters. The original Odyssey unfolds slowly. It lingers over meals, gifts, sleep, clothing, and names. This is not wasted motion. Those details show what violence threatens. A meal matters after hunger. A bed matters after shipwreck. A clean cloak matters after nakedness. A welcome matters after isolation. A name matters after concealment. The ordinary world is the prize. That may be the hidden history of the Odyssey itself. We remember it for monsters. But ancient listeners may have recognized something closer to daily life: the anxiety of hosting strangers, the strain of absent family members, the fear of property being consumed, the danger of travel, the fragility of food supplies, the importance of a marriage alliance, the grief of parents, the difficulty of knowing whom to trust. The Cyclops is unforgettable, but the poem's real magic lies in making ordinary things sacred: bread, wine, a fire, a bath, a woven shroud, an olive tree, a dog at a doorway. These become anchors against chaos, and that is why the final reunion with Penelope feels earned. It is not merely the reward at the end, it is the answer to a long argument. Can endurance preserve a relationship across time? Can two people remain themselves after 20 years apart? The poem does not say love is effortless. It says love may require memory, caution, intelligence, and shared secrets. Odysseus and Penelope do not recognize each other through appearance alone. They recognize each other through the life they built together. Their bed is immovable because it grew from a living tree. The image is almost too perfect. A marriage is rooted. A home is rooted. But roots are not enough. Someone must protect them. Someone must return to them. Someone must remember where they are. The Odyssey has lasted because it understands this contradiction. People dream of escape. they also dream of return. They want freedom. They want belonging. They want to become someone else. They want someone to know who they have always been. Odysseus carries all those desires at once. That is why he remains difficult. He is not a modern role model. He lies constantly. He can be proud, ruthless, and controlling. He also endures pain, loves his home, and learns caution. Homer does not ask us to approve of every action. He asks us to follow a human being through impossible distances. And he asks us to notice what the journey costs. So, when we watch another Odysseus face the sea, remember this: the wooden horse is only the beginning. The Cyclops is only one danger. The voyage is only the surface. Beneath it lies a harder story. A man returns from war. A family survives his absence. A household waits for justice. And a familiar island becomes strange before it becomes home again. That is Homer's real Odyssey. Not a straight path toward victory. A long, uncertain struggle to recognize what is worth returning to. And perhaps that is why the poem still follows us. The next time you hear the word Odyssey, think beyond the voyage. Think of the home waiting at the end. Then notice what, in your own life, makes that home worth finding.